Hey guys, Aaron Cybertron Zhang here, and today I'm back with another episode of Road to Ranked where I climb the Online Series 12 ladder and provide live commentary as I go. Today we're trying out a really fun team built by 2017 World Champion Ryota Otsubo featuring Weezing and Regigigas. So, as always, I'll do a quick breakdown of the team and then get into the battles. If you want to just check out the battles, check out the timestamps linked in the description below. And thanks so much as always for watching. If you do enjoy Road to Ranked, please share support by leaving a like in the video. I'd really appreciate it. So, talking about Weezing plus Regigigas. First of all, thank you to Ryota once again for the team. Please go check him out on Twitter and YouTube, linked in the description below, as well as Rental and a Paste if you want to try out the team yourself. Weezing and Gigas is a really strong combo, and we featured it previously in Sword and Shield. I really liked playing with this duo before, and it continues to be very powerful in Series 12 because Regigigas can essentially one-shot almost anything that's not Dynamax, and can two-shot almost anything even when they are Dynamax, and so you have incredible damage output when Weezing is out on the field with that neutralizing gas. The whole idea behind this strategy is that these two Pokemon will be out on the field simultaneously. Weezing shuts down Slow Start from Regigigas, allowing you to just get very, very powerful attacks off. The problem is that you need Weezing and Regigigas out on the field at the same time. Regigigas, when Weezing is not on the field, is actually often dead weight, can actually drag you down in a game. So it's very, very careful. You have to be very careful about protecting the Weezing, basically, when you're playing with this duo. So I think if you can get, like, at least 2 max moves off before neutralizing gas goes away, that's often going to be a pretty good sign for you. If you get 3 off, that's very, very good for you. The tricky thing is actually getting that off, right, in a format like Series 12, where you're going up against so many powerful, restricted Pokemon that can just knock Weezing out. And the thing is that Weezing, of course, can protect for one turn, but it leaves it very, very vulnerable to subsequent turn. So the main setup you'll want to look out for is when Regigigas can outspeed your opponent and just knock them out outright. If you're going up against faster Pokemon like Zacian, Thundurus, Regieleki, you have to be a lot more careful because it's very likely you will just get outsped even if you're able to get like a Max Strike off on one turn, for example. Max Strike's also important with this team because it drops your opponent's speed and that allows Weezing to often outspeed them because of Will-O-Wisp. The Weezing on this team is max speed, so that will be very, very handy. So, yeah. Regigigas here also has Wide Guard, giving you some utility after your Dynamax is over as well. The 2 restricted Pokemon on this team are Zacian. This is a very standard Zacian set, but you do have max HP investment. As a result, you don't have as much speed. So you should often expect to get outsped by opposing Zacians, but it can make up for it because of the amount of bulklet you have. And you've got Choice Scarf, Calyrex, Shadow Rider, which I think is a really fun set. Most people expect Focus Sash on Calyrex, and so Scarf allows you to get an extra edge and outspeed even all the common Scarf users in the format. So that's going to be really valuable. It allows you to get a fast Will-O-Wisp off, and then you've got Leaf Storm on this set, and so that's really valuable in dealing more damage into things like regular Kyogre and Groudon, for example, as well as some of the more popular Pokemon that are being used now, like Gastrodon, for example. Finally, to round out the team, you've got Blastoise and Volcarona. In my experience playing with the team, I either go with the Weezing Regigigas mode or Blastoise Volcarona. It's kind of hard to mix and match those Pokemon just because like Gigas almost always depends on Weezing, and then Volcarona is really valuable for Blastoise here, as it can cover for redirection and cover for some of the Pokemon you might not want to go up against. So Blastoise here is really good. You've got Mystic Water Hydro Cannon, so you get a really powerful G-Max Cannonade. Dark Pulse here is mainly to hit like Calyrex Shadow Rider, as well as cover for some of the other things that may resist you, and drop your opponent's special defense, setting up for Calyrex's Astral Barrages later on. And then you've also got Yawn and Helping Hand. Helping Hand's a really good utility with Zacian because you already get an attack boost from your ability, and then you can get with the Helping Hand boost, you can just one-shot like opposing Zacians, for example. And then Volcarona in this team is primarily designed for matchups against opposing Zacians, and then Sun teams, because Volcarona for redirection, very, very helpful in reducing Zacian's damage output. And with Flame Body, there's a decent chance you can actually burn opposing Zacians as well. So generally, like I mentioned, it's kind of hard to mix Gigas plus Weezing or Blastoise plus Volcarona, so you normally want to go with one of those 2 modes and then have Calyrex and Zacian in the majority of the games that you have. Before we get started, today's episode is sponsored by Into the AM. They're a super awesome apparel company that makes all kinds of different clothing, ranging from graphic tees to basic tees to joggers to hoodies, and currently they have an anniversary sale. You can get 25% off the entire site. In addition, they're, like I mentioned, known for their graphic tees, so you can get 3 for $53.95, and if you go to intotheam.com/cybervgc and use code cybervgc10, you'll get an additional 10% off. So I really, really like a lot of the products I have from Into the AM, ranging from tees to joggers and to even this bomber jacket that I'm wearing at the moment. So I've linked some of my favorite products from them down in the description below, and thank you to them for continuing to support the channel. Alright, getting into things here, and we're up against Kyogre, Seismitoad, and they've got Pelipper. So, triple water team with Zapdos, Rotom-H, and Zacian. My immediate impression is I think this is an amazing game for Weezing plus Regigigas. I think the key thing to deny is potential speed control, and I also have to worry about ally switch from Rotom-H. So those are going to be the two things I'm going to really look out for in this game. But they don't have any ghost resists either. Honestly, like, Pelipper is one of the main Pokemon I want to KO sooner than later because of its ability to wide guard. So I'm thinking we just go Weezing, Gigas, Calyrex plus Zacian in this one. Weezing is really helpful in denying abilities, and so that can go a long way. And I think that they don't really have a super consistent answer into the Weezing Gigas lead, especially because we've got the Shuka Berry on the Weezing as well. So I can take a Max Quake from the Seismitoad. And being able to drop my opponent's speed here is going to be really valuable in allowing Weezing to get taunts or Will-O-Wisps off. So they're going to lead with Pelipper and Rotom. Okay. The main thing to worry about here is an ally switch, in my opinion. Neutralizing Gas also gets rid of Rotom's Levitate, so I could theoretically Max Quake that for a special defense boost. But I think Max Strike is just the most consistent move to go for right now. And I don't think a Max move from Rotom should one-shot Weezing, so I'm leaning towards just going for a Max Strike onto Rotom and then just Haunting into the Pelipper. Because that denies them Tailwind. If they don't get Tailwind up, then Gigas just outspeeds them this entire game. So, yeah. I'm okay with that. I don't want to Max Quick in a Rotom and then have Rotom Ally Switch and then get nothing off the turn. And the thing here is, even if they Ally Switch Tailwind turn 1, like, I'll get a huge amount of damage off if they're not, if they are Focus Sash on Pelipper, and if not, then we would just KO them, should they Ally Switch with Rotom. So, it's just consistent damage, and dropping your opponent's speed in a position like this is always so valuable. Okay, so no Ally Switch, no Protect either, so we'll just get a free knockout onto Rotom. That's already a really good start. And yeah, I mean, if we get this Taunt off successfully onto Pelipper, that's like as ideal of a turn 1 that I could have asked for. Even if they attack, it's honestly fine here. Like, they're giving up so much, and this is just the strength of Weezing plus Gigas against certain teams, like, especially ones that rely on abilities. Yeah, like, that turn 1 couldn't have worked out any better for us, right? So, they'll probably bring in the Zacian now. Oh, interesting. They actually decided to go into Kyogre. Okay. I'm very okay with that. I've got Calyrex and I've got Zacian in the back. This turn, protecting with the Weezing is pretty safe. If you're my opponent, you could make an interesting play, which is switch Pelipper out into Seismitoad and then set up the manual weather. But then it's like, did you really drop Zacian here? That would be really surprising to me, to be honest. So I'm very content going with the Max Strike onto Kyogre here and then just to protect this turn. Pelipper's in a really weird spot right now. They actually just end up forfeiting. Okay. Well, that game highlights the potential strength of Weezing plus Regigigas. So, yeah, it was a very fast one. I wish could have gone off for a little bit longer, but that is exactly what this combination can do. Just immediately winning the game in a turn or so. And so, yeah. I think, like, the main reason why Weezing and Gigas, it's, like, it can be very hard to execute, right? Because it's hard to guarantee 3 attacks off with Regigigas while Weezing is out on the field next to it. But that's a classic example of my opponent just having no safe options, especially without like a Protect on turn 1, for example, on Rotom. The other way to play around Weezing Gigas is to basically stall out its max moves by going for Protect. Focus Sash Pokemon are actually a really, really big issue for me as well. But in that lead, like, Rotom almost never carries Focus Sash, and Pelipper is much more likely to carry Sash, which is why I targeted the Rotom slot instead. So that lead basically essentially just lost my opponent the game and won me the game immediately, because they didn't have any offensive pressure on turn 1 of the match, and it feels like they led that way to maybe counteract like my potential Zacian lead. But yeah, this was just the game in which like there was very little reason to not go with Weezing Gigas. And like the scariest combo we could have probably run into was Choice Scarf Kyogre plus Zacian. So both of the restricteds coming out immediately. That would have made me pretty scared on turn 1 of the game. Because if you are Scarf, then you can just Water Spout into Behemoth Blade. I don't have super good counterplay to that. My best answer would probably be to protect Max Guard Gigas turn 1, Will-O-Wisp the Zacian, and then protect Weezing turn 2, and then go from there. So that would be my game plan. But yeah, that game just highlights how strong Weezing and Gigas can be as we essentially win the game in 1 turn. So let's keep things going. Alright, getting into things here, and it's going to be Whimsicott, Calyrex, Rillaboom, Landorus, Kyogre, and Entei. Part of me really wants to actually play towards Blastoise in this game, but Rillaboom in itself is obviously a pretty big issue. We're probably going to be Sash on the Whimsicott. I'm not completely opposed to Weezing Gigas as a lead here, because they don't have good resistances in a Gigas other than Calyrex, which we have Max Darkness for. The other interesting thing here is my opponent can only have Focus Sash on 1 Pokemon. So, I don't know who between Whimsicott and Calyrex is going to carry it. The problem here is because we're Scarf Calyrex, like, them having Tailwind creates a lot of issues for me. The other problem with Weezing Gigas is, like, maybe we get a good turn 1, but then they just get Tailwind up, and then we're in a pretty awkward spot going into the subsequent turn. I still want to bring it, though, I think. Yeah, so I'll just go with the bottom 4, but I think, or the top 4. I think the Blastoise could be a really good call in this matchup, theoretically, though, thanks to Yawn. Because my opponent's team is designed to just set up Tailwind and then sweep you under Tailwind. And so, the problem here is, with Weezing and Gigas, it'll be kind of hard to protect my Weezing for all 3 turns of Dynamax. And that means I don't get maximum value out of it, right? Okay, so they're going to go with Whimsicott and Kyogre. I'm honestly okay with that. Like, turn 1, I'm actually leaning towards... It's just Weezing protecting here is so obvious. I actually kind of want to just play aggressive and attack with it immediately. Because I think the play for my opponent's end to make is Tailwind and then Geyser with Kyogre, and then you can, like, read into the Weezing Protect and then target the Regigigas instead. It is pretty aggressive of me to just not protect Weezing. They also could be Scarf Kyogre, I guess, is the other consideration here. So they could just go for, like, a Water Spout. Okay, I'll play it safe turn 1. I think I'm going to protect, I'm going to Dynamax, and I'm going to max Quake into the Kyogre here. The idea is this gives me a special defense boost. Mainly curious if they Dynamax Kyogre immediately to start the game here. They're not going to max it, okay. Or actually, they could be maxing it, and they just could be slower, right? Because Gigas is max speed here. Ideally, they Tailwind Water Spout turn 1, and then I end up, like, getting this Protect off. I get Quake to deal large amounts of damage into Kyogre and drop its, increase my special defense. Because that would allow me to get a second really powerful turn off with Gigas, and that's a big deal. But they are going to Dynamax, okay. I mean, how much utility did I have from just attacking with Weezing? Because, like, the thing is, I don't even want to target Whimsicott in this position, right? Okay, so they're going to just max here. This is why, like, Blastoise would have been an intriguing lead option, because I could at least pressure with Yawn. So I'll go for Protect here. There's Tailwind, no surprise there. Let's see where Geyser's going into. The Weezing Protect here is really obvious, so I wouldn't be surprised if they targeted Regigigas instead. Okay, they do target Weezing, that's good at least. 172 down to 125, so that did 47 damage. Even with a special defense boost, I don't think I'm surviving this next turn. That's part of the problem. I wonder if it's worthwhile to actually sacrifice the Weezing then to get a stronger max strike off the next turn. I could also just go for a double protect here. That would actually be game changing if I got it, right? Got Calyrex and Zacian in the back. So I could switch into either of these to take the Geyser. I actually don't think that's a terrible idea. Like, switching in Zacian, yes, I weaken my Gigas a little bit this turn, but I'm honestly okay with that because I can strike into Kyogre. That also drops Kyogre's speed. And I've got Choice Scarf Calyrex in the back. So that can go a long way as well. I don't want to go for a double protect this early on. I just don't think it makes that much sense for me, honestly. Okay. Maybe Zacian could survive a Geyser here. Depends on the item on Kyogre. And they have Encore, actually. Interesting. So they try to go for a Encore to lock me to protect. But honestly, I wouldn't even mind that too much in that scenario. Okay, they do get the KO onto the Zacian. I don't know, it could have been worthwhile to consider a double protect there, but I don't love the idea of going for a double protect on turn 2 of the game. Just doesn't feel great to me. Okay, pretty good damage from Max Strike there still, actually. Now, more importantly, I get to switch it into my Calyrex. I could go into Weezing as well, but I think I'd actually rather go into Calyrex right now because I've got Choice Scarf on it, and I've got Leaf Storm on it. I just don't think an Astral Barrage KOs Kyogre from this range. So I think I kind of need a Leaf Storm Kyogre just to try to KO it immediately right now. Yeah. So I'm going to go for the Scarf Leaf Storm into the Kyogre and then Max Strike here into Whimsicott. I don't have a great way of denying Tailwind if they're Focus Sash. I think Sash is actually the biggest villain for this team to go up against, because the matchups where I struggle against the most is when they have a Focus Sash Tailwind user or a Focus Sash like Redirection user to allow them to get Trick Room up. So Amoonguss plus Trick Room, for example, Amoonguss carrying Sash or Whimsicott carrying Sash here. Because the way is, if I wanted to deny Tailwind, I could lead like Weezing plus Zacian, but the thing is that the Weezing is just so passive in a position like that. Okay, they do have fake tiers, but we should outspeed with Scarf here, so we're going to get Scarf Leaf Storm off, and that's going to get the knockout. Okay, nice. So, obviously, a surprise there, not a very common attack like you're going to see, but ends up paying off pretty heavily for us. So I get the knockout onto a Kyogre. It's going to give me a Grim-Neigh boost, but that's unfortunately not really important here. Ultimately, the Max Quake on turn 1 was kind of questionable, because it's not like that special defense boost really changed much, to be honest. We almost KO Whimsicott there, wow. So this is actually pretty interesting, because let's say you bring in Calyrex right now if you're my opponent. I have Wide Guard on Regigigas, so I could just Wide Guard you away. And then just go for Leaf Storm onto the Whimsicott as well. Okay, they do bring Calyrex out. Interesting. I mean, they could just go for like a Psychic type attack onto the Regigigas, right? I am at -1 special defense now. So your play, if you're my opponent, could be to just go for a fake tiers and then a Psychic type attack onto the Gigas. I don't have Protect on it, so I actually don't have a way out of that, right? It's the last one or Tailwind on their end. I still don't know who's Sash between these two Pokemon. That's the other part of the problem. Okay, I'm going to switch out into Weezing here. And then go for Lariat into Whimsicott. If I were my opponent, I think I'd go for Fake Tears plus the Psychic type attack into the Regigigas. So then the question is whether or not that actually KOs if you're not Life Orb. I'm not 100% sure on that. Oh, they actually just offer Astral Barrage. Okay. So I could have gone for Wide Guard, but I don't mind switching out here, because now this denies them another Tailwind, and Weezing does unfortunately faint. Okay. So Whimsicott's probably just Moonblasting then? I also didn't think Astral Barrage would one-shot there, so now I'm really curious about the item. Like, are you actually Sashed? Because I feel like if you're Focus Sash, you would have survived that. I had to KO Whimsicott here, by the way, because otherwise they just get another Tailwind up, and then they just outspeed me, which is part of the problem. But I'll take that turn, all things considered. Tailwind peters out now. Now we're back out into Scarf Calyrex. Yeah, I think a big question is what is the item on their Calyrex. And their last one is Landorus. Like, this is where Regigigas could have really good value thanks to Wide Guard. Because my Calyrex is protected for a turn thanks to that. So I'm just going to Wide Guard into Astral Barrage. And because we have the Choice Scarf here, that's also really valuable for us. So then the other question is what item is the Landorus? And are you comfortable? Because, like, you'd have to be pretty careful about, like, self-Earthquaking yourself right now. So I am just going to Astral Barrage and Wide Guard here. And this is the nice utility of Regigigas even after Dynamax, right? If you have Wide Guard, then you can still put in some work, even though you're not dealing very much damage. So that last turn was big. I got more than I expected out of it, although it would have been nice if the Weezing survived. Actually, Weezing fainting there isn't even bad for us because it gives me a free switch in, I'd argue. Okay, so no protects on either Pokemon. Let's see if you're Focus Sash on Calyrex here. They're not sashed! Amazing, okay. So we just get the knockout there outright. And this is why it was so important to knock out Whimsicott earlier, right? It gets the, prevents them from Tailwinding, so we guarantee outspeed both Pokemon. And they just go for a Rock Slide. Amazing. Okay, that played out as well as I could have asked for. This game, though, was a little bit scary because, like, I didn't really get too much utility out of Weezing Gigas offensive-wise, right? But, yeah, the other tricky thing about playing around Calyrex in Best of 1 is, like, yeah, like, are you Choice Scarf or are you not? And I think if they had Rillaboom in this endgame, things could have been a little bit scarier. Well, actually, maybe we were still fine. Because I would still Wide Guard into Grassy Glide, right? Actually, I wouldn't even maybe Wide Guard in that position. Well, I have to cover for them being Focus Sashed. But I think what ultimately helped me here was them having Landorus as their final Pokemon. So, yeah. The question then to ask is, what is the best approach, right? Because Kyogre applies so much offensive pressure, and they had Fake Tears on Whimsicott as well, so that's another big issue for me. I can't lead Volcarona there. Like, Calyrex doesn't really do much. Blastoise, Calyrex. The problem is that Dynamax Kyogre just does so much damage to me, so I actually do think Weezing is still the answer. But one thing I could have done better in this game is, instead of Quaking on turn 1, I could have just gone... The reason I Quaked, by the way, was because I was afraid of Geyser into Gigas, and then another Geyser to just KO me next turn. Turns out they had Fake Tears anyway, so that didn't even end up making much of a difference, but... like, I think, because if I had gone for the Max Strike onto the Kyogre, and then turn 2, I sacrifice my Zacian and get another Max Strike on a Kyogre, then Astral Barrage probably finishes off the Kyogre from that position. And then with Astral Barrage, we would get a special attack boost, and I'd have Wide Guard support from the Regigigas as well. So, yeah, that could have made a big difference here, but truthfully, I just don't think this is the best matchup, because what Weezing and Gigas likes to do is outspeed your opponent, and I can't outspeed my opponent when they have Tailwind, and I don't have a way to outright deny the Tailwind, because there's no, like, Fake Out on this team, right? And so, that's what makes things a little bit trickier. But, even with that, even with them getting Tailwind up, we were able to find a path to victory, and the Choice Scarf Calyrex here was absolutely amazing, outspeeding the Kyogre, even though they had Tailwind up, thanks to the Max Strike speed drop, allowing me to get the KO with Leaf Storm. That certainly caught my opponent off guard, and then having the Scarf Astral Barrage with Wide Guard support from Regigigas, you know, to finish things off there as well. So, not like the best game for Weezing Gigas, as saying, like, we didn't just get to sweep with it, but we had a lot of utility from a lot of cool surprise attacks with this game. So, yeah, let's keep things going. Alright, our next match here, we're up against Kyurem-W with Zacian, Thundurus, Urshifu, Indeedee, and Whimsicott. Okay, that's really cool. Another Whimsicott here doesn't bode well for us, though, because, like I mentioned, I think Tailwind's already a pretty big issue. I'm actually intrigued by Volcarona and Blastoise in this one. My problem with Weezing and Gigas is that the Weezing just gets crushed after Tailwind goes up. And it's very hard to get 3, like, max powerful attacks off with the Regigigas. Yeah, I actually think Blastoise and Volk is pretty interesting here, especially because we've got Focus Sash on Volk as well as Yawn on Blastoise. So, I'm going to go for a completely different route in this game, I think. Also, my opponent's username reminds me of Ryosuke Kosuge's name, so I'm double checking, because that would be really hype if so. No way. This is Ryosuke. No way. This is the player that I lost to in the World Championship semifinals. I'm pretty sure. Like, that is his name, so I don't know if it's someone else using his name, but yeah. That's awesome. Okay. That is so cool. I'm so excited. It's really cool to see him using Kyurem-W as well. Okay, let's see. I'm assuming this is him, and for those that don't know, yeah, he was the one who knocked me out of the World Championships in 2013 in the semifinals, and got second at Worlds in 2013, top 8 at Worlds in 2014. Yeah, just a very incredible player from Japan. I'm gonna go with Thundurus and Urshifu, which makes sense as a Weezing Gigas lead, because to counteract Weezing Gigas, because you could max Airstream in a close combat. Okay. You could obviously double up on Volk right now. You could just Airstream me immediately. The idea of Yawn here is really interesting if I'm expecting them to Dynamax Thundurus. I could even Yawn and protect. That seems kind of bad. Restricted is Kyurem. It also could be some... No, this is definitely offensive Thundurus if you're leading this way, in my opinion. I went for Rage Powder and Cannonade, and that's like the safe play to make, but I don't think that's it. Yawn was just really tempting there. But my problem with yawning is I don't get anything else out of the turn, and then it's most likely that my Volcarona just faints. And if Volcarona faints... Well, I suppose actually then I could bring in Zacian. So maybe the correct line to take here was Yawn Thundurus turn 1. Rage Powder with Volcarona to make sure I don't take any damage. Then turn 2, if Volcarona faints, I get a free switch it into Zacian, and then I can just protect Max Guard. And that prevents my Blastoise from taking damage from what I think is the biggest threat in their Thundurus, right? Because Max Lightning here is obviously really scary. And I think in their shoes, I would always Airstream into the Volk this turn. rather than going for a lightning. Yep. Okay, so there's max airstream. It's gonna bring me down to Sash. The thing is, I wanted to really KO the Urshifu because I was like, oh, if I knock out Urshifu, then that allows me to actually use Calyrex with more confidence in this game. We're also Choice Scarf, by the way, which can actually be a super big deal here. Because with Choice Scarf, we can actually outspeed Thundurus and then Will-O-Wisp the Thundurus. Okay, let's see if we get a burn there. We actually do, which is quite nice. I don't think it actually makes a difference because I think Cannonade plus the Residual gets the knockout anyway. But if I knew that was going to happen, then yeah, Yawn onto Thundurus would have been a sweeter play. But this one's interesting because, yeah, I can just bring out Calyrex and then go for that Choice Scarf Will-O-Wisp. I'm just laughing because, you know, obviously my most infamous moment in VGC was missing all those Will-O-Wisps against Ryosuke in 2013, so see if Calyrex can do a little bit better than Rotom here. I'm also nervous about them being Lumberry, which is why I didn't Yawn on turn 1, but Solvest is just by far the most common item. Okay. So I'll bring out Calyrex here. They're going to bring out Kyurem. I mean, I really am just leaning towards a Will-O-Wisp onto a Thundurus. Because I've got Zacian in the endgame, and that's obviously pretty good. I mean, the other consideration is, do I just attack here? Because I am faster right now, and they're probably not going to expect that. So I can get an Astral Barrage off. Their last Pokemon is going to be Zacian for sure, right? I just don't do much with Cannonade. I can't really max Darkness in good faith here either. I'm just going for the knockout onto Kyurem here, but I don't know if that's the right move. Like, burning the Thundurus here is pretty valuable. Okay, they have the max Darkness, so they're going for Darkness into Freeze Dry. That makes sense. Yeah, and then, like, Will-O-Wisp there wouldn't have saved me from surviving anyway, so I do think this was probably the correct play. Their team is just so hyper-offensive. Oh, it's Draco instead of Freeze Dry. Okay, it doesn't get the knockout, but that's obviously a ton of damage. I think it's looking kind of tough for me right now just because my last Pokemon is Zacian. I wonder if it was worthwhile to just bring out my Zacian out right there then instead of the Calyrex, but yeah. I think what Ryosuke did really well in this game is control the speed. Right? Like, I wasn't really in a great position to outspeed him. Turn 1 is where I have a lot of question marks about how I played. It's still totally winnable with Zacian, because we're max HP Zacian here in the back, and we have Cannonade ticking off right now as well. So it's not over by any means, but their last one is indeed Zacian. It was smart to bring out the Kyurem first over Zacian as well, because they had brought out their Zacian, I could have just burnt him immediately, and that would have set up my Zacian for a very nice endgame, I think. So the special defense drop here doesn't really matter. I've still got 2 turns of Cannonade left. You could just like max Airstream or max Lightning and Behemoth Blade here. You could max Lightning into Blastoise, Behemoth Blade into Zacian. I think this turn essentially comes down to who they target and do they double up onto something. Because the play I want to make is just Max Guard with Blastoise. And then just Behemoth Blade into Zacian. This forces it to be a 2v1 in the end game. So, I'm going to go for it, but they could get around this by just doubling up onto my Zacian right now, right? Okay, they do Lightning into Blastoise, though. That's good. Sub here would be a really good play. Ah, no! It's in prison! Oh. That was about the last thing I could have played around. I don't think I'd ever close combat there either. That's just something where it's like, well, this is a reason to run in prison, Zacian. That's really cool. That is really, really cool. Wow. Well, if that's the way I'm going to go out in this one, I really can't feel too bad, honestly. That's incredible. Is it winnable from this position, assuming that they don't imprison my close combat? Can't even double protect here. It's so cool. It is so hard to like cover for that as well, right? It's just you run into it. Okay, I think my best, I feel like I actually don't have a way to win here unless like he makes a mistake, so my best line was actually to protect my Zacian and then Hydro Cannon. Okay, they do Wild Charge Blastoise though, so yeah, that wouldn't have worked. Ah, wow. First time going up against Imprison here, but it is quite a strong option. The problem is that I eat up a defense drop here, but I can't go for any offensive attack other than close combat, right? I have to. Ah, we're gonna lose by just... Yeah, it's them getting that speed boost on Thundurus earlier that makes all the difference. Because I will get the knockout here, and there's one more turn of Cannonade, I believe. So, this was such a close game, but it was really fun, honestly. Wow, what a match. Yeah, I mean, that Imprison's what saved him, right? I wonder if I just went for close combat instead. It does cover for Imprison, but it feels so risky. My only way to win here is if for some reason their Thundurus is slower, but there's no chance. Especially after a speed boost. I'm sure they were max speed here. What a game. What a game. Well, like I said, that's not a game I feel too bad losing, honestly. Because, yeah, really cool team, really good execution. And I feel like, ultimately, like, Imprison is one of those moves where in a best of one, it's really hard to cover for, right? Like, yeah, it's just tough to play around. So then the question is, like, when I brought out Calyrex immediately, could I have played any better with that? I could have brought Zacian out immediately, but he could have just gone for, you know, a Life Orb Earth Power to KO it there anyway. So I don't really regret that. What about the lead matchup? Weezing Gigas is not it in this one because I just get wrecked by a Max Airstream into a close combat on turn 1, and I don't have a great way around it. My best play around it would actually be to Max Guard Gigas, like Dynamax it, Guard, and then Will-O-Wisp into them, but that obviously feels pretty risky. So yeah. What else could I have done against Thundurus plus Urshifu as a lead? Since I think Max Airstream was always going to come out on turn 1, actually because you do so much damage through Protect with Airstream and Wicked Blow ignores Protect, I can't even Protect Volcarona. I might as well just Rage Powder on turn 1. So I think the other potential play I could have made was the Yawn play on turn 1. So it would have been Rage Powder with Volcarona, Yawn into Thundurus, sacrifice Volcarona, get a free switch into Zacian, and then double Protect the next turn. I think that could work, honestly, because the thing is that the majority of their damage into Blastoise comes from Thundurus in this match, and so if we can avoid that, it puts us in a slightly better position. But yeah, that was a really, really interesting game, and yeah, to go up against who I think is Ryosuke is really cool, because we have not played against each other in a very long time, so yeah. It's been a fast couple of games, though, so I'll look for one final one today. Final one here, and we've got Calyrex, Lele, Dialga, Alecki, Landorus, and Incin. Okay, that's a really interesting mix, because normally Dialga likes to Trick Room. I was playing a practice game and I learned Alecki damage calcs into Blastoise. So if you're timid Alecki, even with Magnet, and you're using Rising Voltage or Thunder turned into Max Lightning, you actually never one-shot Blastoise. If you're modest, though, you have a chance to KO. And the reason I bring that up is because I think Blastoise is actually an interesting Dynamax option here. Weezing Gigas is still so strong. I'm actually intrigued by the Choice Scarf Calyrex here on my end, because I think there's a good chance we can just, like, nuke them immediately with it. Honestly, I'm not opposed to Calyrex Zacian here. Like, I normally like Weezing Gigas, but I think Weezing Gigas as an endgame to clean things up can be a little bit more valuable here. The main reason I don't love leading the Regigigas here is because their Calyrex potentially has Will-O-Wisp. Weezing's obviously really weak to the Psychic types on my opponent's end, right? So, like, if I lead Weezing Gigas into Calyrex and Lele, you know, they can just Expanding Force Psychic turn 1. And I can only knock out one Pokemon in that position anyway. And then turn 2, it's not like the Weezing can do anything to, like, reduce my opponent's damage output. So then it's most likely the Weezing just faints after the second turn, and that's not ideal for us. Let's see. Okay, they're going to go with the Alecki and Incin. That was a little frustrating to see, to be honest, because the Weezing Gigas lead actually would have been quite powerful here. Still not the end of the world, but it's not the lead I'd really want to see here, honestly. If I were my opponent, I would probably just fake out the Zacian and then Max Lightning into the Calyrex. So, yeah. Weezing Gigas would have been quite powerful here, but I thought my opponent would counteract it a little bit more. Because the thing is, if I let Weezing Gigas here, it's always safe to just max guard, or sorry, protect Weezing and then max Quake into either Pokemon. I'm fine going for Astral Barrage here. I do risk them going Fake Out and Lightning into Zacian, right? So, like, I have to be a little bit careful about switching out into either Pokemon here, which also kind of stings. So in this position, I think I'm actually going to stay in. I'm going to Astral Barrage, and I'm just going to Behemoth Blade into the Aleki slot. See if they Dynamax it. Yeah, they are going to... Oh, they don't Dynamax it. They don't Fake Out either. What? Okay, so I bring you down to Focus Sash. And they go for Electro Web. Okay. I'll take this, all things considered, because I was really nervous about Aleki just maxing immediately and, like, overwhelming me from that angle. I did miss out on an opportunity to close combat the Incineroar there, but I think it's okay. What'll be interesting here is if they end up, like, Flare Blitzing me and then KOing Zacian, but then giving me a free switch into Regigigas. That would actually be really good for me, in my opinion. Okay, they go for Parting Shot. So we go up... We have a quick lead here, but the problem is they drop both of my speeds, and now they can go into both of their restricted Pokemon, and that is terrifying. Whereas if I had close combat at Incin, we get the knockout onto that, and then Aleki is still out on the field, so you can only use it to target one Pokemon at a time. Okay. So Calyrex comes out, no surprise. And I would expect Dialga just to come out next to it immediately. Meaning I can switch Calyrex out this next turn. I could go out into Gigas. Like, that's... Oh, interesting. They go back out into Incin. I wonder if they brought Dialga then. I feel like Dialga would have been pretty strong to bring out here. I'm also Choice Scarf on Calyrex, but I don't think I can risk it here. I think I'm just going to switch out. And I actually don't mind switching out into Regigigas here. What do I want to do with Zacian? Because I'll survive an Astral Barrage. It's just that I'm at -1. I definitely should be switching Calyrex out here, I think. So I'm going to go out into Gigas. Honestly, I don't mind a Behemoth Blade onto their Calyrex, because I think when you're using this team, the key thing to consider is Focus Sash Calyrex, right? Because if you KO the Sash, then you can always Astral Barrage with 100% confidence, knowing you outspeed and get the knockout onto them. Yeah, they just Astral Barrage. Okay. No Fake Out from Incin either, so I get another Behemoth Blade off. Zacian's gotten a lot more value than I've expected it to in this game, honestly, and we'll gladly take that. I also have Wide Guard, right? So I can Wide Guard potentially with Gigas next turn. I'd be very happy to see them just Flare Blitz me here onto the Zacian to give me a free switch in, but they're going to Parting Shot, okay. Smart. I think you don't want to be trapped in with Incineroar right now. So I expect Dialga to finally come out for my opponent. Which would lead to a really interesting endgame if you do just bring Dialga out immediately. Because I can still max Gigas and just max Darkness Calyrex with relative ease. So it is Dialga. Got the Scarf Calyrex in the back. Zacian's obviously in a really bad position. I truthfully want to just Dynamax here, max Darkness to try to KO the Calyrex, get a special defense drop on Dialga. Well, I guess the special defense drop doesn't matter if I'm sacking the Calyrex here, right? I feel like it's correct to conserve Zacian, though, bro. What if I actually give up Weezing? That might seem controversial, but I actually think it makes some sense here. Okay, this is normally kind of weird, because you don't want to just sacrifice Weezing the way I'm doing it, but I think it makes sense, because I think Zacian and Calyrex are both really strong for me in this endgame. Okay, so we'll get Neutralizing Gas off now. Whoa. One way or another, I think this works out pretty well for me. Unless they went for a Psychic type attack onto the Weezing switching, but even if they do, I just eliminated your Calyrex for relatively free. The Weezing switch actually I think does make some sense too, because it ensures that I outspeed the Dialga unless they went for a Psychic type attack. We're gonna max the Gigas here. And they just Astro Mirage. I mean, Weezing shouldn't faint here, so I actually think this puts us in an absolutely amazing position. Yeah, we survive. Amazing. So I'm really glad to have this game because it features the fact that you don't necessarily need to just Dynamax, like lead Weezing-Gigas and Dynamax. It can be strong in the end game if you conserve it effectively. It's hard to do that well, but in this game we were able to pull it off. Okay. So now Dialga's their last Pokemon. You can't fake out into the Regigigas, obviously. Trick Room is the one thing I'm a little bit nervous about. I am at -1 attack. They're at -1 special defense. It's easy to protect Weezing this turn. They're going to Dynamax Dialga most likely. Actually, do they? Trick Room is probably their better option right now. I'm just worried about them being Shucka Berry on Incin. But I don't know if a Max Strike guarantees the knockout for me. With me being intimidated, so I think I will go for the Quake here. And I'll just protect because I don't want to get like crit by a fake out and then not and get slow start activated. Okay, they're Dynamaxing. I think them maxing actually ensures me the win. Because it means if you're Dynamaxing, you can't go for actually I wouldn't say ensures us the win yet. But if you're Dynamaxing, it means you can't Trick Room, meaning that I'll outspeed you with both Calyrex and Zacian in this endgame. Okay, so Dialga's gonna max. Yeah, if you're not shook on Incin, then I think we really should have this locked up, because I'll just get a knockout on Incin. Yep, they just fake out. If they're Shooka, though, things get a little bit dicier here. But they're not Shucka Berry. Okay, cool. Shooka's like a decently common item on Dialgas nowadays. Or sorry, Incins nowadays, so I think it's reasonable to expect it there, but there's so many good items you want to run on Incineroar, right? Like a berry, safety goggles, Shucka. There are just so many viable items you can run, and it really depends on, like, you know, what you want on your team comp. That's really surprising that they Steel Spike the Gigas there rather than Weezing, because if you target Weezing there, you at least get a knockout through Protect, and then you activate my Slow Start, but now you have no chance of winning, I think, because it's just a 4v1. Even if they're Weakness Policy here, I don't really care, because I have Calyrex and Zacian in the back, so I'm content to just max Quake, and might as well Will-O-Wisp to get residual damage on it as well, and just put them on a timer. I think if they target Weezing there, we still probably win, but it gets a little bit more tricky, because then I have this Regigigas that's really not dealing any damage, and then, like, the Dialga can just one-shot my Zacian as well as the Calyrex. Although, actually, then what I would do is, because we have sub on Zacian, I would just bring Zacian out and then sub a bunch to stall out their Dynamax. Okay, they are Weakness Policy, but I think it's fine, because you don't have enough turns of Dynamax at this point. We got Will-O-Wisp off as well. It's a really fun episode, though. I'm glad to highlight how good Weezing and Gigas can be. Okay, they're going to Steel Spike us. Yep, and even with Policy, thanks to the special defense boost, it's really not enough to get a knockout. So maybe that's why they're like, okay, I'm going to actually not target the... Okay, actually, never mind. I can see what they were going for. I think they were hoping that I would activate the Policy on Dialga and then just one-shot my Regigigas after the Policy. But in this position, when I have the lead, I'd rather just ensure the knockout onto Incineroar, right? Which is exactly why I went for it, so... Yeah, actually it's better to just Lariat here because we can never miss, and then Taunt as well. And then this just allows me to get a free switch in a Calyrex or Zacian, and then clean up the game. There's Darkest Lariat. That's also nice because it ignores defense boosts. There's Taunt. And yeah, it's rare to see Weezing come out in this endgame and provide so much value, but it did a fantastic job. I think the thing that changes things dramatically for me here is because I have Substitute on the Zacian, we would have been fine anyway, because, like, the Zacian can just keep subbing. Actually, I can only sub once, I suppose. But subbing once is enough to stall out a turn at their Dynamax, right? And that's what we're looking for in this endgame, where we're just trying to get rid of their Dynamax so that they don't have double the amount of HP. So Neutralizing Gas wears off. But now your Dynamax ends. And this is why Dialga, I think, is pretty strong, right? It can boost its defenses very, very nicely through Max Quake and through Max Steel Spike. But... now you're taunted, so you can't even go for a Trick Room even if you have it. I can just close combat into high horsepower. You'll survive the close combat, but that's fine. Actually, because you're taunted and you're burnt, I think the better line to take here, just to ensure that we win, because they have all these boosts on Dialga, is to just Darkest Lariat and then go for a Protect this turn. the reason I'm protecting here is because each turn of burn takes down Dialga as well. So I can protect this turn, you know, bypass an attack completely, and then I can substitute next turn to get even more burn damage onto it. Earth Power, Steel Spike, Warm Wind. Could be Trick Room, Protect. Any of those as the last attack. But in a position like this where we've got Burn and Taunt Off, there's just like no reason to not play safely like this. Although I think at this point Close Combat into Darkest Lariat and Burn should finish it off, so I don't think we need to drag this on any longer. What a fun episode, though. I'm really, really happy to show off what Weezing and Gigas can do. And yeah, we had some pretty good performances with it overall. Yeah, Close Combat is enough to finish it off there, so no need to drag it on for another turn or two. I think ultimately what won us the game here is we actually somehow got Regigigas into a good position. And then the turn, when they had Calyrex and then brought Incineroar, I thought it would have been an amazing position for them to just have Dialga and Calyrex out next to each other and then just Dynamax the Dialga. So I think they gave up a lot of pressure by not just going for that immediately, and that paid off really, really heavily for us. So yeah, hopefully this opens your eyes to the combo of Weezing and Gigas. It's absolutely like not amazing in my opinion because it's pretty volatile and you have to be very careful about how you approach it. But just like, you know, the previous formats where Weezing and Gigas were good, there's a lot of potential for it if you execute it correctly. And so yeah. Man, that third game was so fun, though. It was so close. And the Imprisoned Zacian, I think, is a tech you're going to see a decent amount of. But that was my first time running into it in Series 12, so yeah. Anyway, that's going to be it for today. So thank you so much, as always, for watching. This episode, I honestly thought was really, really fun, so I hope you enjoyed it. Leave a like if you did enjoy. Don't forget to check out Into the AM. Thank you to them for sponsoring today's video. And I'll see you all next time. All right, peace.